Welcome to Growing a B2B SaaS. On this show, you'll get actionable and usable advice. You'll hear about all aspects of growing a business to a business software company. Customer success, sales, funding, bootstrapping, exits, scaling, everything you need to know about growing a startup, and you'll get it from someone who's going through the same journey. Now your host, Joran Hoffman.
Welcome back to another episode of the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. Our goal is to help you grow your B2B SaaS. We already talked about customer success in another show. Today, we're going to take it one step further. How can you gather customer insights and leverage them for the growth of your SaaS, also known as the customer-led growth strategy? We're going to talk with Katya Ryabova today. And as we say in Dutch, she has been able to look in the kitchen of many SaaS companies. What does it mean? She advised over a dozen SaaS companies as a researcher and a consultant. With these insights, she knows the mistakes you want to avoid and how to use the available customer data to accelerate your growth. Katya helps startups to create a clear, repeatable framework for identifying optimization opportunities and gaps at every step of your customer's buying journey. With the result, a sustainable growth strategy. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Katya.
Hi, great to be here.
Great. So I guess for people who are not convinced after the introduction, why should people listen to you today?
As you said, I worked with over a dozen SaaS companies and tech companies, helping them run their customer research and turn it into actionable insight to make decisions about their product and about their marketing. I'm a researcher with a sociology background. I've been in marketing for over 13 years at this point, which is crazy to think about. And I'm also a certified customer-led growth consultant, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more in detail in a minute.
Exactly. That's going to be the first question. Customer-led growth, like probably a lot of people don't know it yet, that it is a growth strategy. What does customer-led growth mean to you?
So I want to start by saying that when I talk about customer-led growth, it's a capital C, capital L, capital G framework that was defined and applied multiple times by my mentors, Claire Swellentrop and Georgiana Laudi. So they are the ones who I would say pioneered customer-led growth. And what it is, it's just a set of strategies and tactics that you can collect all into one framework that is repeatable, that you can do and implement at every stage of growth of your company, which rests really on 4 important things: collecting customer research, interpreting that customer research to understand the jobs to be done that your ideal customers have, and then mapping those customer jobs on a customer journey map, which gives you a really clear idea of the gaps and opportunities that you can address and fill along the way to make sure that your customers are finding you quicker, converting quicker, and are getting the value out of your product in the shortest amount of time possible. So a long answer to a really simple question: what is customer-led growth? It's not a strategy to substitute other growth frameworks. So it's not a competitor, I would say, to sales-led growth. It's not a competitor to product-led growth. I think about it as a basis that you can rest any other strategy you want. Because if you're customer-centric, if you're used to collecting customer insight, if you're used to operationalizing this customer insight, you can build your company and you can build your product in any way you want, whether you lean on your sales team, whether you're marketing-led, whether you build a self-service product, it all applies. Customer-led growth is not a competitor. It is something that you can use as a foundation to grow in any way you want.
Exactly. Yeah, and there was one question I wanted to ask, I guess, like how does it differ from other growth strategies? But you're saying it's not a substitute. You will have to use it in conjunction with any other strategy.
Yeah, I find it important to point out because it could be treated as another buzzword or another something-led growth. So it is catchy, I think. This is why we like using it, but we don't insist on customer-led growth. We can just as easily talk about building in, collecting customer insight into your process, becoming customer-centric, listening to your customers in a smart way. It doesn't mean that you have to do everything your customers tell you to. You need to look just a little deeper to find out what makes them switch to your product, what makes them buy, and what makes them stick around. So this is customer-led growth at its core, but we don't have to call it that. As long as we follow its principles, you can call it anything you want. And again, you can lean on sales, you can lean on marketing, you can lean on self-service products, inbound, outbound, whatever you want.
Nice. For today, we are going to call it customer-led growth, but indeed you can call it anything you want. When a company wants to start with customer-led growth, like what should be a minimum in place to get started?
At a minimum, you have to have customers.
Fair point.
If you're pre-market, you can still apply some of the principles to audience research, to trying to find that initial product market fit. But ideally, the best fit for customer-led growth is when you're just exiting that early stage, when you're starting to scale, when you have paying customers that are happy to pay you, that you can talk to and figure out what actually made them into those loyal customers. If you don't have that, gets a little trickier. So I would say having some sort of base, even if it's small, is the minimum requirement.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the reasons why it works really well with different growth strategies, right? Because you have to start somewhere and you can't start with customer-led growth. So you have to pick a different growth strategy before, and then you can go dive deeper into customer-led.
Again, when you're just starting out, and we'll talk about it a little more for sure, you're still trying to figure out which direction you're going. You have your product, but you have different customers who might be signing up for different reasons, and you don't necessarily know which one of these you would want to prioritize just because you're still starting out. And if your sample is 10 customers, that won't give you a really solid idea or a very solid reason to stick to one versus another. But you can still listen to the customers, obviously, but it gets a little easier to prioritize when you have a larger pool to choose from. So principles can be applied at any point, but you will see the benefits and be able to actually operationalize, which is the word I'm going to use a lot, the insight you collect when you started scaling already.
Yeah, makes sense. And I guess maybe then one question here, like how important do you think to always keep track of your ideal customer profile? Because you can have a lot of clients, right? But in the end, you want to focus on the ideal clients or the ideal customer clients. How important do you think it is to focus on your ICP as well?
The goal of the framework at any point is to actually understand your ICP better. And if you don't have that understanding, move towards actually finding out where your ICP is. Because at an early stages, we commonly see that we don't really know. We're guessing here, we're guessing there. And again, this is very common. This is normal at an early stage. But when you're hitting that point where you need to start growing, not haphazardly, but in a more sustainable, I could use the word predictable way, you need to constantly refresh and refine your ICP. Because your ICP at every stage might look very different. And this is why repeating the framework is actually really valuable. My clients that I work with, I recommend they do it at least every year. This is really arbitrary advice, obviously. Some companies decide to do it every 6 months. Some companies do it every year, maybe every year and a half, every 2 years, even though I think 2 years is a bit of a stretch. When there's a big change in the economy or in the specific situation of the company, like now in 2023, this is a great example of the economy changing quite rapidly and in some ways unpredictably. Now is a really good time to do this, to see how your ICP is reacting to the changes. Has your ICP changed? Do you want to change direction? Maybe you want to maybe not pivot, but serve a different type of customer that in the past perhaps was someone you didn't prioritize for whatever reason. So it is important to do this work continuously. This is unfortunately not a one and done deal. Your ICP changes, your personas, quote unquote, the jobs to be done of your customers change, and you need to keep up with those changes.
Yeah, I think this is really good advice. If we go back to customer-led growth, so let's say you have happy clients, let's say you have the customer base. What would be the key metrics you track to measure the success of the customer-led growth strategy?
I'm going to give the answer that we'll love to give and we'll hate to hear. Ready for it? It depends. Yeah. First of all, defining the KPIs, so key performance indicators that you are going to use to measure the success, is a big part of the framework, first of all. And it depends really on your product and on your customer, how the customer is using the product and what exactly are they finding in the product that give them that first value quickly. So it is a really general answer, but I cannot say without any specific example, there's no way to decide which metric would be the most important. At an early stage, if we think about the customer journey, when we're focused on acquisition, a very common metric that you would measure is the traffic to your website, let's say, new unique visits. That's very common. The trial signups would be another common one. I'm not saying that this is true for everyone, but it's common. And once we get into the evaluation, when the customer is already trialing, when they're trying to get to their job to be done, that's when it gets murky. And this is when you really need to look into the product and what the customers are actually doing to know what metrics would be the most important to measure and which ones you can safely ignore.
Yeah, it makes sense, because in every SaaS company, you focus on different things. And in the end, it all comes down to where do your clients get value, and then you turn those into metrics. Let's dive into always a fun topic for me. What are the most common mistakes companies make while trying to implement led growth?
So the most common mistake is not doing it, I think. But I do want to say that because the framework, the customer-led growth framework, is not really well known yet, everyone who I worked with who wanted to implement it, they were already sold on it. They were on board with customer research. They understood that they needed to listen to their customers, to center their customers, and they wanted to make that change not superficially, as in every couple of months we run a survey and call it a day, but make it into a process of collecting that insight and implementing that insight into the decision making, basically. So if we talk about companies who want the CLG framework, they either work with my mentors or with a bunch of other consultants that they're certified. So they're good. We'll help them. They're good. There's also a book coming out about customer-led growth, I think in May. Hopefully it will become a little bit more well-known. But I think what's important for most other companies is just the idea, getting comfortable with the idea of actually doing customer research. And I recognize that this is a scary phrase. A lot of people have very different associations. When someone says customer research, they imagine a long, lengthy, involved, time-consuming, expensive project, which doesn't have to be that at all. But starting with collecting customer research, I think, is the most important first step. And a lot of companies still don't do it. There's a statistic that I probably won't be able to trace the source for, but I'm going to say it anyway. So that only 1 in 10 companies collect any sort of customer insight, any sort. And we don't know about what kind of research they're doing, if it's just a 2-question survey or is it interviews. But that means that 9 out of 10 companies don't talk to their customers at all. So they're essentially guessing what is needed, what is important, what they can let go, whether it's in development, whether it's features, marketing, what have you. So I think being comfortable, understanding that maybe guessing is not the most sustainable way to grow is the first step. Yeah. And the second step is letting go of fear that customer research is difficult and time consuming, because it doesn't have to be. It can be. You can definitely make it as complicated as you want, but it isn't necessary to get to the insight that will really help you make decisions.
Exactly. And with anything, you can make it as time consuming as you can. You can jump on hour calls with clients, but that is going to take you weeks or months to do something, or you can make something a bit more scalable, of course.
It is much easier when you know exactly what you want to ask. And if you have that idea that you want to understand how they came to you, what happened in their life that they came to you, and why they stuck around, what motivated them to keep going in your product, and what made them certain that the product is helpful and that gave them that better life. And I'm using the jobs to be done theory phrasing right now. If this is what you want to know, there's 5 questions that you can ask, and you need maybe 15-20 minutes of your customer's time to get answers. And when you get those answers, you talk to 5, 10, 15 customers, however many you have, and you already have a better idea. If we're talking about implementing customer-led growth framework formally, we recommend a few more interviews. We normally go for 10, 15 at a minimum. And if we're talking about surveys, we would want 25, 30, 50 quality responses, but that, generally speaking, that's not that many. If you have 1,000 customers, getting to 50 survey responses isn't very difficult, as long as you're focused and as long as you know what you're asking. And a lot of companies don't. They ask about features, they ask leading questions. They're a little bit biased in how they approach the interview, which is, again, very understandable and very normal. The research is only as good as you make it. And if you don't use it after you collect it, then, might as well not do it. And most companies don't. And that's a bit of a circle.
Yeah, and in the end, you all have to start. So you might make some mistakes at the beginning, but in the end, you will learn from those.
For sure.
You mentioned framework a lot. Can you share maybe some strategies, processes you've used to implement a customer-led growth strategy at one of your clients or all your clients?
Yep. So I think the value of customer-led growth as a framework, again, as a process, is that it's very defined, standardized, and it doesn't change. In general, it doesn't change. Of course, each company has a specific set of customers. They have a specific set of challenges. They have different teams that sometimes need to be on board. But overall, the process is the same. The process starts with identifying a group of customers you want to learn from, which are paying customers. Always, we want the customers that are actually paying for the privilege of using our product, because we want that kind of leap of faith of handing the credit card for something. And we then run research on these customers. So as I mentioned, it could be interviews, it could be surveys. And either with interviews or surveys, we're asking very specific questions that follow the jobs to be done framework. Sorry, not framework, theory. It's a theory, it's not a framework. And again, those are understanding the struggle that our customers had before they signed up for a product, how they found our product, what made them stick around and give the product a try, and then what made them into loyal customers, what sort of better life our product delivered that they cannot live without it now. So that struggle, motivation, and desired outcome are the three key components that we're trying to uncover in the research. And after we do that, we analyze the data that we collected to see if there are any themes among customers, to then identify the most common jobs to be done that our customers are solving with our product. And usually there's way more than one. Sometimes in rare cases, there is one job. And I had one client where they had a pretty large customer base. So we ran a survey. It was only a survey. We didn't do any interviews. And when I got to analyzing the data, and I got all the themes and I saw all the struggles, and I was trying to figure out, I saw one job and then I was trying to get at a different one because I could see that there's something there. And then after struggling for a little bit, I thought to myself, maybe there's just one job. Maybe there's just one job. And it turns out that yes, in very rare cases, the customers just shared overall the same struggle, and the motivations that they had that helped them stick around the product, they were also very similar. So we defined that one job, and it was very easy after, because we didn't have to prioritize and choose between jobs. So once you have those jobs, then the team needs to make a decision on which of the jobs we're going to prioritize for the time being, because it's very important that you focus on one set of customers at a time. And it's not to say that you're going to ignore them for the rest of your company's life. As we talked about, your ICP changes, you change direction, you can choose to focus on different ICPs at different times. But when you run through the framework, you need to choose one. And after we choose, what we do is we map their customer journey quite literally on a map. It ends up being quite a large whiteboard, or can be done in a spreadsheet, it doesn't really matter, where we visually map their journey from before they knew that our product existed, to finding out, to understanding that they have a problem, to finding different solutions, to evaluating our product as a potential solution, and then choosing it as the solution that helps them to solve their job. And then the latest stage is when they're the very happily paying, loyal, you can pry it out of my cold hands kind of customers, where there are opportunities for growth, for upselling, for serving them in different ways. But at this point, they already solved their job to be done. So that map is then used as well as a guide, basically, that usually makes it very clear where the gaps are, how we can serve our customers better at any stage of the journey, where we can bring them to value quicker, where we can do a better job of acquiring them, where we can do a better job of showing them why they should give our product a try. And there are also opportunities that become really apparent, some low-hanging fruit that you can solve for without massive investment, whether from your team's time or money or what have you. And after that, the final step is just basically making decisions on which of these gaps and opportunities to prioritize and the tactics to make it happen. So I gave a much wordier answer than I thought I would, but the process, again, is the same. 1, collect customer research. 2, analyze and distill themes from it. 3, map the top priority customer job on a customer journey map. And 4, make decisions about filling the gaps and capitalizing on opportunities. That in a nutshell, it is it. And you can repeat that at any point for any business challenge or any problem that you have.
Yeah, and I really like a couple of things you said, as you mentioned, like with the journey, you're also starting before they become a client or before they sign up. So you're also looking at the acquisition.
Super important to know that there's life before your product, and it often gives you clues on how to, well, acquire better fit customers earlier on and quicker.
Yeah. So customer-led is not just trying to sell them more, and you even took that word off. You said serve them more, which I thought was interesting. It's not just expanding them, it's not just keeping them, but it's also helping you to grow from the beginning of the funnel again.
I think what can get lost sometimes, and what I really am trying to remind myself sometimes about as well, is that being customer-led means truly prioritizing the interests of your customer and being in service to your customer and making decisions that makes their lives easier. And obviously making sure that you grow along the way, that you're able to serve them sustainably and be comfortable as a business and make a profit for sure. But at its core, it's still about knowing that you have a product that is supposed to help people in whichever way, and making sure that you're doing that in the best way for you and for them.
And this is the most ideal scenario, right? You set out the framework, you walk through the processes. It's not always happening like this. I can imagine when you start working with clients. Can you give us some examples of challenges, obstacles you face while implementing the customer-led growth strategy?
Sure. The first one that occurs to me is that it's not always as easy to get customers on the phone. Obviously, the first step is collecting research, and sometimes people are just not as forthcoming with booking a call or not, or showing up to a call, and it can be overcome. You just need to build a little bit more time into your project's time frame to make sure that you can follow up with people, that you can give them a bit more time to schedule a time with you. You can offer incentives to participate in research, although I always recommend first just ask them nicely first, and then if you want, you can offer an incentive. What's funny to me is that in that way, running research is really seasonally dependent. And I recommend to never start trying customer research in December, because unless you get people maybe like the first week of December, Christmas holidays just overwrite everything, and you might become a bit disillusioned with the process if you try to get people on the phone a week before Christmas. So that's one thing. That's a challenge, but it can be overcome. It's just something to be prepared for. And obviously, as a researcher, I've seen it all, and we usually get to the number of respondents we need. It just sometimes takes a bit more time. So that's one. There usually aren't any problems with research itself, because we know exactly what questions we're asking. We know exactly what we're trying to do. So that just comes down to the skill of the consultant and or to the team capacity, because sometimes my clients want to do it themselves and they just need a hand to facilitate. I don't always do it for the clients. I can do it with the clients as well. Although in a lot of times, they like, no, you do it for me, no problem. So what I see a lot, and I actually don't have a solution for it, is prioritizing and choosing between different customers is difficult. It's difficult for teams, it's difficult for founders, because I think it's human nature and psychology that you don't want to miss out. And when you have two groups of customers that love your product for very different reasons, and they use it in very different ways. And when you're asked, okay, you have to choose one, it's challenging. And sometimes it helps to remind them that, again, you don't have to prioritize one over this other forever. You can just focus on one for this quarter, and then next quarter you can focus on your other group of customers. But making that decision is difficult. And what it comes down to, again, just giving it a shot, giving it a try, and prioritizing one and seeing what happens, because you can always go back to serving everyone, and you can always say, yes, our product is for everyone. Please don't do that. Your product is never for everyone.
Exactly.
So that's another. I think most of the challenges are really the challenges that have to do with people, with how people communicate, with whether there's alignment among teams. But this is not specific to the framework. I think this is just inherent to running a business and building a company. And this is something that you can overcome only by working on the team communication and how you get buy-in for specific things and how well you align behind wanting to become customer-led and wanting to be customer-centric. It is not an easy switch if you're approaching maturity and you've never run customer research. It's tough, but it can be done.
Yeah, because it is going to involve a lot of departments within a company, of course. So somebody makes a decision, you want to go towards this growth strategy, but it doesn't mean it's just that person or that department. It will involve everybody within the company.
That's why it's always a great idea to align before you even start the work. If we're starting formally on CLG, customer-led growth, it's important to make sure that we're all aligned, at least on the surface, so that we can bring everyone back together when we're making decisions about priorities and how to fill those gaps and use those opportunities. Because if there's no consensus on why are we even doing this, it probably will not go very far. It will still be useful. Again, customer research is useful no matter what. If you even start listening to your customers, that's better than nothing. But alignment within the organization for sure is important.
For people who are listening now and think, okay, we definitely need to start with customer-led growth. Why and when should SaaS companies consider reaching out to you for help?
So if you're completely sold on customer-led growth, then you know what it is. And hopefully I gave some sort of an idea of what it is. You can definitely get in touch with me so that we can solve a specific problem or challenge you're facing. Stagnant growth is one of the most common reasons why clients come to us. So that's one. And we can either do it together. I can facilitate and lead you through the process, or I can also be the one running all the research and analyzing all the data. However, I'm a big advocate for baby steps. As I said, a lot of companies don't do any sort of customer listening or communicating, that is. So if you think that you want to start with customer research, and I think you should, you can bring me on board to help you develop the processes for collecting that customer research and turning it into insight that you can actually use to make decisions. It doesn't have to be a full-on, let's run a big research project, let's map everything, and let's revamp our strategy from start to finish. It can be that if you want it, but if you want to dip your toes into customer research, I, as a researcher, would be delighted, because it's one of my favorite parts about the framework. And because it's one of the pillars that it rests on, you can't do it without the research. That it's very important to start with that. Nice. Baby steps. And if you need somebody holding your hand, then definitely talk to Katya. Oh, yes. You always need someone holding your hand, Jordan. I think in any aspects of life, you'll do much better when someone's holding your hand. Exactly. Or at least showing you the way. Nice.
Growing a B2B SaaS is tough. We know. This is why we started Redditus. We help you to grow your monthly recurring revenue without high upfront costs. How? By leveraging someone else's network and only giving away a commission when they deliver you a paid client. It's called affiliate marketing. It's already a really cost-effective and scalable revenue channel. We even made it better for you. With Redditus, you can start for free and only start paying us when you generate revenue. Learn more at www.getredditus.com.
We're an affiliate marketing company, so we basically help SaaS companies to grow via else's network. Like, how do you see affiliate marketing fit into the customer-led growth strategy?
Great question. And if we think about that customer journey map that I mentioned, so we have those phases. We have the very early problem state phase where the customer doesn't necessarily know that you exist, that your product exists, but they have a problem. So I think affiliate marketing could be a great acquisition tool here. If you're the one running an affiliate marketing program, you can acquire customers that way who will be better fit because they're coming through someone that they trust. I also think if you are the one participating in an affiliate marketing program, you can implement it at the growth phase. So that late phase where you have happy customers that you're serving in the best way you can, but perhaps there are expansion opportunities there that you can offer them something that your product doesn't necessarily do. But if you're an affiliate for a product that can help your customers, I think that could fit in that late part of the journey as well. So either very early or either very late on. Evaluation needs to be focused all on you. and on your product with no distractions.
Definitely makes sense. We're coming to the end of the show. I always like to ask these two questions at the end. So when we talk about customer-led growth, what kind of advice would you give companies or other SaaS founders in these two different stages, starting with somebody just growing to 10K MRR? What kind of advice would you give to them?
Because it's still early for you, you're still small, you can use it to your advantage to instill that customer centricity early on. You can model it, you can start collecting some sort of easy customer research at any point without necessarily, again, relying on the whole framework to try and operationalize the insight that you gather for 3 customers. It might be a bit too early for that, but again, taking advantage of the fact that your team is small, that your communications is probably much easier. You can implement founder interviews, for example. At this point, the founder can easily talk to customers who sign up to find out what made them sign up. You can add a 1-question survey at the end of the sign up process to ask them, hey, what brought you to our product today? Which gives you a great idea of how they found you and why they're here in the first place. And then because at an early stage, obviously the focus is acquisition. We just need more customers. You can use the research and the principles of customer growth to improve retention and to understand what makes those early customers stick with you, and also what makes some of the customers leave and maybe not focus on that. So doubling down on what works, but knowing what works, you will need to ask your customers, even if they're still few and far in between.
Yeah.
For the 1 million ARR, so at this stage, you should have a really great pool of customers to run full-on research projects on. And this is where you're probably running into issues of how do I grow in a predictable way? How can I influence my growth in predictable ways? So this is where a full framework will come in very handy. So this is where you would run your customer research. You would identify the customer jobs to be done. You would need to prioritize one to solve at a time, map them on the map to find those opportunities and to solve specific problems that you have. And this is where the cross-team communication and alignment is something that's going to become a challenge. So if we talked about that very early stage company who started implementing bits and pieces of customer research, if you grew to trying to get to 1 million ARR, you already have the seeds of customer centricity that you just need to double down on. And I think at this point, if we talk about research specifically, one piece of advice I would give is that don't let it be owned by one specific team. The research is something that will be used by everyone. Marketing, product, sales, customer success, they will all benefit from having that research, but don't put it all in one team to run it, because when it's shared, it's more likely to be helpful across teams when it's not owned by just one team.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because then they have ownership of the end results, or they help to get the end results. So they also feel a lot more, how do you say it, connected with the research instead of just another department saying something to you.
Exactly. When you're the one owning part of research, if you are the ones running research collectively, yeah, you're bought in because you're part of it. And you know exactly what you're trying to get out of it, which is serving your customer better. And that's something that every team should be able to get behind.
Any final thoughts, things you want to share with our listeners today before we finish the show?
I think we covered a lot. I think I try to give a lot of advice, and I think most listeners are like, how does this apply to me? No, I hope it's been helpful and interesting. I could talk about it for hours and hours. I promise to talk your ear off. I hope I did that in a symbolic way.
No, I really enjoyed this. As I mentioned it a couple of times in the show already, I'm running this podcast also for myself to learn a lot of things, and I definitely learned a lot today again. So thank you for that.
I'm happy to hear.
So I guess if people do want to talk with you for hours, how do they get in contact with you? So what would be the best way to contact you?
The best way is LinkedIn, because I do share a lot of my thoughts on customer-led growth and research there. You can follow me on LinkedIn or DM or book a call, because all the links to book a call are on my LinkedIn profile, which is linkedin.com/in/Katyar, Katyar. So LinkedIn is the best because I check it all the time. And also you can be a lurker there. You don't have to get in touch right away if you want to learn more first.
Exactly. I would definitely recommend lurking on the content from Katya, because we've been connected for a while and you do indeed put out good content. So I will share the link, because your name is probably tricky for a lot of people, but it's Katya Ryabova, if I pronounce it correctly, but the link will
you're doing a great job of it.
Cheers. Thanks again for coming on the show, Katya.
Thanks so much, Jordan. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
You've been listening to Growing a B2B SaaS. Joran has been a head of customer success before founding his own startup. He's experiencing the same journey you are. We hope you've gotten some actionable advice from the show. And we hope you had fun along the way. We know we did. Make sure to like, rate, and review the podcast in the meantime. To find out more and to hook up with us on our social media sites, go to www.getredditous.com. See you next time on Growing a B2B SaaS.